Before Stephen Marley ever touched a Grammy. Before he became one of reggae's most respected producers. Before audiences worldwide recognized his voice and spiritual sound. He was simply a child growing up inside one of the most legendary households in music history. A house where songs were written like prayers. Where guitars leaned against walls like family members. Where rhythm wasn't entertainment. It was identity. Because the Marley family wasn't just famous. They were becoming a movement. And for Stephen Marley, family would become both his greatest blessing and his greatest responsibility. This is the deeper story of the parents and siblings who shaped him into the man the world knows today. Father, Bob Marley. The man who turned reggae into a global language. To the world, Bob Marley became more than an artist. He became a symbol, a revolutionary voice wrapped in dreadlocks, spirituality, and unforgettable melodies. But before the mythology, before the murals, before the endless global tributes, he was a father raising children while carrying the pressure of international fame. And young Stephen witnessed all of it from close range. Bob Marley was born in 9 Mile, Jamaica, and grew up during difficult social and economic conditions. But through music, he found purpose, identity, and eventually immortality. By the 1970s, Bob Marley and the Wailers had transformed reggae into a worldwide cultural force. Songs like One Love, Get Up, Stand Up, Redemption Song, Three Little Birds, weren't just music. They became messages of hope, rebellion, and spiritual awakening. But behind the fame, Bob Marley was also deeply connected to his children. Even with tours, interviews, and political tensions surrounding him, family remained important. Stephen grew up watching his father rehearse music, write lyrics, discuss Rastafarian beliefs, speak about Africa, interact with musicians from around the world. Imagine being a child and realizing your father isn't just famous. He's changing history. And yet Bob's influence on Stephen went beyond music. Bob taught his children to stay spiritually grounded, to respect their African roots, to use music responsibly, to never separate art from truth. Stephen absorbed those lessons deeply. But tragedy came painfully early. In 1981, Bob Marley died from melanoma cancer at only 36 years old. Stephen was still just 9 years old. And suddenly, the family lost not only a father, but the center of their universe. The emotional impact was enormous. The world cried for a legend. But inside the Marley household, children were grieving a man they simply called Dad. That loss created a turning point for the family. Because from that moment onward, the Marley children weren't just carrying their own dreams anymore. They were carrying a global legacy. Mother, Rita Marley. The woman who protected the Marley legacy. If Bob Marley was the public flame, then Rita Marley was the quiet power behind the survival of the family. Strong, spiritual, disciplined, protective, Rita Marley was far more than Bob Marley's wife. She was a singer, performer, entrepreneur, philanthropist, mother, cultural guardian. As part of the I3s, the iconic female vocal trio supporting Bob Marley and the Wailers, Rita helped shape the harmony that became central to the Marley sound. Her voice became part of reggae history itself. But perhaps her most important role began after Bob's death. Imagine suddenly becoming responsible for preserving Bob Marley's legacy, raising children under global attention, protecting family unity, managing business pressures, helping grieving children survive emotionally. That required extraordinary strength. And Rita delivered it. She made sure the Marley children stayed connected to Jamaica, Rastafarian spirituality, discipline, humility, cultural pride. Without Rita's guidance, the Marley Empire could easily have fractured under fame and pressure. Instead, she helped transform grief into purpose. Stephen Marley especially reflects many qualities associated with Rita: calmness, humility, spiritual depth, emotional control, quiet leadership. While others chased headlines, Stephen often mirrored his mother's more grounded energy. And many fans believe that balance became one of his greatest strengths. The siblings, a family of stars. The Marley siblings are unlike almost any family in music history. Each child inherited pieces of Bob Marley's spirit. But each expressed it differently. Some became fiery performers. Some became spiritual messengers. Some became entrepreneurs. Some became producers. Yet together, they formed one of the most powerful musical dynasties ever created. Ziggy Marley, the eldest son and natural leader. Born David Nesta Marley, Ziggy Marley became the sibling most publicly associated with carrying Bob Marley's torch after his death. As the oldest brother among the melody makers' generation, Ziggy naturally stepped into leadership early. He possessed charisma, stage presence, songwriting ability, spiritual messaging, and after Bob's passing, Ziggy helped lead the family musically through Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers. The group featured Ziggy, Stephen, Cedella, Sharon. Together, they became one of reggae's most successful family bands. But what made the Ziggy-Stephen relationship special was balance. Ziggy often became the visible frontman. Stephen became the sonic architect behind the scenes. One commanded attention, the other perfected the sound. That partnership helped define modern reggae for years. Cedella Marley, the business-minded creative force. Cedella Marley brought a completely different energy into the family legacy. Elegant, intelligent, and visionary, she evolved beyond music into business, fashion, and branding. She became an entrepreneur, fashion designer, author, cultural ambassador. Cedella helped modernize the Marley brand for younger generations without losing its roots. Her leadership proved the Marley legacy could extend beyond music into global culture and business. Inside the family, she represented creativity mixed with discipline. And her success showed that the Marley children were capable of much more than simply continuing reggae traditions. Sharon Marley, the quiet stabilizer. Sharon Marley is often described as one of the calmer and more emotionally grounding members of the family. Though less publicly flashy than some siblings, her role inside the Melody Makers and the Marley family structure remained important. She contributed harmony, maturity, and emotional stability. And sometimes, in large famous families, the quiet figures become the glue holding everything together. Damian Marley, the firebrand of the next generation. Then came Damian Marley, the explosive younger brother who fused roots reggae with hardcore lyrical intensity. Known worldwide as Junior Gong, Damian became one of reggae's boldest modern voices. But behind many of Damian's greatest musical moments stood Stephen Marley. Stephen produced and shaped major portions of Damian's career, helping create the rich sound behind projects like Welcome to Jamrock. The chemistry between them became legendary. Stephen brought smooth musical layering, spiritual balance, production mastery. Damian brought raw energy, lyrical fire, modern edge. Together, they created music that introduced reggae to entirely new audiences. And fans loved them because their bond felt genuine. Not corporate, not manufactured. Real brothers, real culture, real chemistry. Julian Marley, the spiritual preserver. Julian Marley became known for deeply spiritual roots reggae. Many fans compared Julian's aura to Bob Marley because of his meditative energy and conscious themes. His music often focuses on spirituality, peace, Rastafarian teachings, African identity, human unity. Inside the Marley dynasty, Julian represents one of the strongest links to classic roots reggae traditions. Ky-Mani Marley, the versatile experimenter. Ky-Mani Marley brought a more urban and experimental flavor into the family legacy. He explored reggae, hip-hop, acting, storytelling, modern Caribbean influences. His artistic style proved that the Marley legacy could evolve while remaining authentic. And that flexibility became one of the reasons the Marley family stayed culturally relevant across generations. The pressure of the Marley name. What many people forget is this. Being born into greatness can be emotionally complicated. The Marley siblings grew up under impossible expectations. Every song they released, every interview, every performance, was compared to Bob Marley. That pressure could have destroyed them. But instead, most of the siblings found their own identities while still honoring the family legacy. And Stephen Marley perhaps handled that challenge better than almost anyone. because rather than competing with his father's shadow, he helped preserve the light behind it. Stephen Marley's role inside the dynasty. Among all the siblings, Stephen became known as the producer, the perfectionist, the calm strategist, the sound engineer of the Marley legacy. While others often stood center stage, Stephen mastered the art of building greatness from behind the scenes. He shaped albums, guided sounds, mentored family projects, protected authenticity, and over time, people realized something important. Stephen Marley wasn't simply one of Bob Marley's sons. He became one of the architects responsible for keeping reggae spiritually alive in the modern era. That's not just family legacy. That's cultural responsibility. And Stephen carried it with quiet excellence.